Hello, everyone, and a very big peppy welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you all here. Thanks for joining us during your lunch breaks. Hopefully, you'll be able to grab some water and food and sit back and enjoy today's session. My name is Kayla Griswold, and I am a senior client success manager here at Peppy, and I work closely with HR and benefits leaders and well-being teams on really how health and well-being support actually works in a day-to-day. So to kick off the session really quickly, just some quick housekeeping reminders. We will have a Q&A available as well as a poll. So please do get involved and answer as you see fit when you see the poll come up. If you have any technical problems whatsoever throughout the webinar, please shoot this email, marketing@peppy.health, a quick message, and we will do our best to help you get back into the webinar. But this event is being recorded, so if you have someone on your team who wasn't able to necessarily make the event today, please be rest assured that they will be able to access the recording after the session today. So without further ado, I am very pleased to introduce our guest speaker today, Lauren Lennis, and you will all get a little sneak peek into our working dynamic as well, because Lauren is one of my brilliant clients that I have the pleasure of working with and helping her to support her people internally. So Lauren is a health and well-being lead at BNP Paribas and has over 18 years experience in embedding well-being into organizational culture. BNP was also awarded last year the Best Neurodivergent Support Program, recognizing their commitment to not only building kind of neurodiversity support, but building support that works in very real and complex environments. So, Lauren, thank you for joining, and I will let you please introduce yourself.
Well, I think you've done it for me. Thank you, Kayla, for that warm introduction, and thank you for inviting me along. And I'm delighted to join you all today, and hopefully I can share some ideas and we can support one another to move forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. We're very lucky to have you here today. So, just to kind of take a little bit of a step back altogether and understand why we are here for today's discussion and conversation. Time to Talk Day is tomorrow, so Feb 5th being celebrated, as well as Neurodiversity Celebration Week coming up in March. So many organizations are kind of in the stage right now where they're thinking about neurodiversity and how to best support their people. So what we constantly hear is this question of we want to do the right thing, but what should we actually be doing in practice and how? So that's really what today is all about. And to kick things off, I think it's really important to understand for both myself and Lauren, with all of you who are joining the call today, who are tuning in, we really want to understand kind of where your organizations are currently on their neurodiversity journey. So you'll see this poll that's just popped up here in front of us. So the question is, where would you say your organization is on their journey right now when it comes to neurodiversity? So we are mainly focused on awareness and education. We are starting to think about how support works in practice. We have some support in place, but it's inconsistent. We have a structured approach, but want to strengthen it. Or we are still working out where to start. So select whatever answer feels most appropriate for you and the organization you're representing here today, and we will see what the results look like. Right, brilliant. Hopefully everyone can see this. So our winner here is that we have some support in place. Okay, interesting. It does look pretty skewed throughout the answers as well. We have quite a few people in each section here, which in a lot of ways is great because we're covering a lot of ground today. So it really will be applicable to everyone depending on where they are in this journey. I think it's interesting though that we have some support in place, but it is inconsistent. So I think that that'll be an interesting topic, Lauren, for us to kind of explore. But really great to see that, people are starting to think about how support works in practice and this, which is fantastic. Thank you everyone for filling out that answer quickly. Again, it's kind of that moment where, okay, how do we figure out how this awareness piece needs to turn into practical support that managers can actually use and that really embeds it into the ethos and culture of your organization. So that's where we'll focus today's conversation. So Lauren, are you ready for me?
You think so? I'm in the
Yeah,
hot seat.
not at all. Not at all. So we will kind of do a little interview style today together. So I have a few questions that I've prepared. So I'll kick off with the first question I have here for you, Lauren. So what was happening at BNP Paribas that made neurodiversity support a priority from a business perspective?
So, from a business perspective, the reason why we made neurodiversity a priority was a two-pronged approach. So we actually did a survey question to our employees, which indicated to us that 15% of our people identified as being neurodivergent. So they could have had a diagnosis or it's self-diagnosed. And then on top of that, another 30% care for a neurodivergent child or children. The other prong was at the same time the NHS assessments for autism, ADHD, and specific learning difficulties were stretching 12 to 24 months, and it's probably more than that now. So, a wait that left families stuck, stressed, and in many cases, being forced to pay out 8 to 10K for private routes. So we realised that the longer the wait, the higher the risk of potentially losing talent and increasing things like absenteeism due to like carers leave, even if you're not the individual that has a neurodivergent condition. So we essentially turned the NHS bottleneck into a fast track diagnostics and post assessment benefit. So not only did we solve the human problem, but we also unlocked a business advantage, and that was the retention and productivity. But ultimately, with anything that we introduce, it is the right thing to do for the individual.
Thank you, Lauren. I think also for those of you who selected that you are still working out kind of where to begin, you'll have heard that Lauren said that they sent out a survey, which I think is a really, really brilliant starting point of just listening to what your people need, where they're at, what the support could look like. So I think that that's a really, really good takeaway as well, Lauren, from that. Thank you for that. So I know you mentioned a couple of things when it comes to, of course, higher risk of losing talent. But what risks did you see if this wasn't addressed properly? And, where were things starting to escalate internally? What did that look like?
But I guess going back to the survey results, 30% of our population cared for a child or children with a neurodivergent condition. So that is essentially going to take its toll on the individual themselves, which will impact the business. They could end up having to take more leave due to caring for their child, stress from not having the support that they need to help their child thrive. Um, we did see recruitment blind spots, which were leaving us missing out on innovative thinkers. Potentially, it's a compliance risk as well. We had a neurodiversity support gap in our offering, and having an inclusive neurodiverse workforce is crucial for a business to absolutely thrive. So there were, again, many different elements that we had to take into consideration to think the worth of investing in the diagnostics benefit that we were offering far outweighed how important it was to the business and the individuals. And how did we act, or shall I say react? Because it was a reaction. It had to be a reaction. It had to be quick. It had to be punchy. As the diagnosis cases came in from our initial diagnostics pathway, we activated the post-diagnostics care program. So this is anything from like therapy, occupational health, or medication where appropriate. So it started to already lift that burden off families because there's no point giving someone a diagnosis and then they still have nowhere to go. So not only did it give a clearer pathway and guidance for the individuals, but potentially cut extortionate private expenses to the individuals themselves. But we couldn't just offer a diagnosis. We had to look at what we could do internally to ensure our employees were best supported outside of the PMI support. So we added a dedicated neurodiversity policy. We've got an intranet hub, which is like a one-stop shop. We did do a celebrity-led awareness campaign. And this essentially helped to elevate the profile and provide that guidance and effective signposting that we continue to communicate now. Throw in there a recruitment audit that we're still going through now because it's extensive and it has to be. We've got the manager and employee training that we're rolling out year on year. So we did two cohorts last year, and we've got the next one coming up for Neurodiversity Celebration Week. Um, and with these elements in place, we're able to best understand and engage our neurodivergent talent.
Brilliant. And I think one thing you mentioned as well when it comes to that this was reactive, right? And this was, in response to something. I think that a lot of people probably joining today's call are in that exact same boat. And exactly why you registered for this webinar is because this is it's required, right? It's a reaction to something that is needed internally right now from your people. I think for those who are joining proactively today, well done. I mean, wherever you are in the spectrum, I think it's brilliant because again, it's about taking that next step, right? So we'll look at what that looks like. But I think you've also mentioned several things as well that are great takeaways from a policy perspective, creating a clear employee pathway. I think with my work in client success, a big challenge is often making sure employees know where to go when they need different support and how to find it. And if someone's dealing with something, it's that much harder to navigate through the weeds of everything with work and life. And so creating that really clear pathway for someone to just understand what the next steps are, I think is really key. So that's brilliant to hear. And I was already going to ask you in my next question as well around kind of like how to design this approach. And you've already mentioned amazing things within that with the campaign and everything and upcoming manager and employee training as well. But just to kind of hone in a little bit more on managers itself. So really within this approach, how do managers fit into this equation and what do managers really need in order to support colleagues more consistently?
I think it goes without saying that managers are essentially the bridge between the corporate commitment and the everyday experience. And you need to give them the confidence to support neurodivergent colleagues. And I'm just going to name a couple, but some essentials were, of course, the targeted training. So by offering this training, it was more awareness and tools rather than a training module as such. So, learning things about diagnostics, basics, reasonable adjustments, and how to have that supportive conversation. And out of that, we asked the survey after the training, and we received a 97% increase in confidence in now being able to support their teams from that manager training module. So it was brilliant. Um, Off the back of that, we also needed to ensure that we had ready to use tools. So these are like quick reference guides. We've got an adjustments checklist that we worked with our occupational health advisor on. And going back to that central intranet hub that we have, that will have all the policies, the resources, and also story sharing content. So it's great for the manager because they can reflect back on that hub, but it's also good for the manager to go, did you know we've got this hub and these are the resources that you can access? Here's the link, go and take a look. Because then that starts to build a relationship that I do care about your well-being, I want you to thrive. These are the resources, pick out what's best for you because every journey is individual. So we've got those ready to use tools. And then I'm going to touch upon a third element, which is the visible senior sponsorship.
Mm.
So we had neurodiversity being highlighted in town halls, but most importantly, we had senior managers sharing their own personal stories, be that they are neurodiverse or they've got children with neurodivergence. So it was opening up the managers to demonstrate to their team that this is okay. We've got the support here. Come forwards. We want to support you. We want to help you. And I'm putting my hand up. I'm showing myself. I am here and I'm sharing my story in the hope that it will encourage you to do so. So we've been we've been, I'm not going to say lucky. It shouldn't be a luck thing. I think our managers realize the importance of being visible, in particular on this topic, and were willing to come forwards based off of all the other events and awareness that we've done. And yeah, it's been a very positive response.
That's fantastic. I think also the fact that there was a 97% response rate
I
on that
know,
survey is
brilliant.
unheard of. So well done on that. But I think also too, the fact that you had this proper training in place is brilliant. But I think the consistency element, right, of how from after that training, what does that look like? And I think that that's where the internal hub, the guides, the story sharing comes in because it continues to weave this natural, very, very natural cultural element of, just as you said, this is talked about at work and it's okay to talk about this at work and we should be talking about it at work. And I think that setting that, standard and having our senior sponsors and executives lead by example is a huge piece of the puzzle. So makes total sense to me. When it comes to the managers themselves and kind of when you think about escalation routes, how did you think about this so that managers kind of felt safe and employees and HR kind of what did that look like at a big picture level?
See, this is difficult with escalation because there's no set structure. Every employee journey is going to be unique, based on their diagnosis, based on how they like to be approached and managed. There's so many different variables in there. So you have to essentially build a bespoke internal framework. And you've also got to consider that this also relies on the individual disclosing their diagnostics and challenges in the first instance. So going back to your point about culture, you need to ensure you've created this safe culture already for those individuals to reach out for help, be that to the manager or to HR. Um, I think the key element that we have in place that can help support both of those strands is the on-site occupational health advisor. They are the clinical first stop individual that essentially triages and advises on things like reasonable adjustments, but they can also support on coordinating things like therapy or medication guidance. We also work with some external specialists. So, of course, we've got the assessments in play, diagnostic assessments, but also one-to-one coaching. So, the coaching could be for the individual, but there's also potential coaching for the managers. And then finally, just looking at how you can weave it into your other pillars, things like financial well-being. Have you got a financial well-being provider that can help support you, in particular around neurodiversity and finances? So this layered safety net essentially guarantees that whether an employee is seeking a diagnosis, coping with a new one, or simply needing a few workplace tweaks, the right expertise is advised according to the individual. And that's what it's got to do. It's got to be conversational. So yeah, that's how we've approached it, and so far, so good.
Yeah, I think that answer alone too, Lauren, is a perfect evidence to the fact that you've been very thoughtful throughout every single step of this process in putting this support together and what it looks like and who's involved. So now to kind of take it to the next step, understanding everything that went into getting this support in place, what what difference has it made for both employees and the organization at large?
So you know I'm a data girl, Kayla. So let's cycle the data. So let's look at the data. When we first introduced the diagnosis pathway, we had an absolute surge in year one. I think it was over 500 people went through the pathway. That's 500 people taken out from the NHS bottleneck. But that has grown year on year from initially children going through it to the parents of the child going through it because they had a positive diagnosis and they see traits in themselves. So we've seen that growth year on year. Then we look at this retention boost. So going back to the survey, one of the survey results indicated that our neurodivergent employees rated their likelihood of staying with the company. I think it was something like 8.2 out of 10, which is fantastic. So it means that there is an understanding and appreciation of what we are offering and that it's helping those individuals again to thrive. And then brand leadership. So I won't lie, I was blown away that we did win the best neurodivergent support program. It gave us the confidence in our approach to keep moving forwards and improve, because essentially this is an evolving space and we will never be finished with this project. These elements, they can visibly show you how we've made a difference, but ultimately the ultimate way that I feel a difference has been made is the powerful evidence in the stories that are now spoken out loud. So again, going back to that cultural piece, we had like in the last neurodiversity celebration week, the portal had 900 hits just in that week alone. We've got a thriving Teams chat with our parents and carers community that have a specific parents of neurodiverse children. There have been lots and lots of personal testimonies shared across the business. And that is the biggest impact. That's the biggest evidence of creating a culture where employees are feeling safe to express themselves and their challenges. So, yeah, essentially, long story short, a problem that began as like a public health bottleneck has become a culture cornerstone. So our employees are feeling seen, they are feeling supported, and hopefully motivated to stay and grow, which is only going to benefit the business.
I love that. And I also think that when it comes to being a well-being leader, it is ever changing. And that is the challenge, but also the beauty in this too. So, this will continue to change and grow, which is exactly why we're continuing to have these conversations. This is not Peppy's first conversation around neurodiversity, and it won't be our last. So, yeah, I think it's exciting to kind of figure out, okay, what's coming? What's the next step? When it comes to quickly, just diving a little bit into the Best Neurodivergent Support Program Award, um, looking kind of back in retrospect, what do you think really mattered most? I know you said you were surprised, that this award came your guys' way, but from a very early implementation of the program itself, why do you believe it was really recognized, and what did matter in leading to this award?
Pleasantly surprised, by the way, pleasantly surprised. Um, I think real magic happens. It happens with the collaboration across the whole business. So to mention a few, of course, we've had HR and D&I. So things like drafting the neurodiversity policy, setting up the hub, running the storytelling campaigns. That came from our ERGs, the Ability Network, to encourage and drive that. Then it's also working with the likes of facilities and health and safety, reconfiguring workspaces, introducing soundproof booths, assisted technology kits. So turning our physical environment into a supportive one. Um, and then probably another one to mention is L&D. We worked with L&D to find a provider that can deliver the training, but also supporting us on things like the checklists. So that was just to mention a few, but it has to be a whole business collaborative approach in order to ensure it's embedded and not just sitting in silo. So each of these groups owned a piece of the puzzle. The initiative moved from essentially a nice to have benefit, which we were offering, to a fully embedded data-driven culture where those employees felt safe to share their stories, where the managers have increased confidence to support them, and we can see tangible outcomes. So we actually had, from all of the assessments that took place up until last year, 80% of those assessments were positive diagnosis. So that's 80% of people that now have an answer, and then they can get the relative support to help them thrive, rather than struggling or questioning themselves or beating themselves up and losing their confidence. So you've got that early intervention insight paired with, I won't lie, it was relentless coordinated collaboration across HR, OH, health and safety, D&I, wellbeing, senior leadership to create the program we have today. And it is only going to grow. We are working on more and more things within the company.
Love it. And with the team element too, the collaboration piece, I think is something that we can't lose sight of as well. For my other clients who are also joining this call, everyone will know that I talk a lot about networks and really collaborating internally with the people who are extremely passionate on the ground, understanding what is needed from that employee perspective. And so I think that that is a huge lever, along with, L&D and pulling in these executive sponsors to kind of set the tone. I think there are so many pieces of the puzzle. So it's exciting to think about, though, how many people you can empower to be a part of the change, which I think is pretty special. I'm just keeping an eye on the time here for us, Lauren. I'm going to breeze through some other questions, and then we'll get into some Q&A with those joining. But this is a hard question. If you have to give the leaders who are joining today two or three, I'll give you three, practical actions that they could take in the next 3 months, what would they be?
Um, so I'd say first and foremost, you need to identify the gaps. So going back to the survey that we released, whilst not everyone would have disclosed on that survey, it can essentially give you an indication of your employee challenges, but also as a culture. And again, we were pleasantly surprised to receive the initial results that we did receive. And it'd be interesting to see when we do the next survey how that looks as well with all the work we're doing. So, absolutely identify gap. And what you need to do within your own audiences and employee networks. Um, Embed a policy or guidance document. Doesn't need to be called a policy, but there needs to be some sort of guidance document which gives, I know it sounds bad, but it gives more credibility to both the employees and managers. Sometimes you need that written on paper with your logo all over it to say, this is what we should be doing to support employees, for managers to support employees. You need that credibility. Um, and then, yeah, sparking that conversation and visibility. Work with your ERGs, source your senior leaders, help support the heightened awareness around neurodiversity and the importance of having a neurodiverse workforce. But I do want to touch upon this. I know I've spoken at length around the diagnostics offering that we have. However, you needn't have huge budgets to provide a safe environment. Many of our digital tools are with signposting to things like the MS Office assisted tools. So there are free tools out there that you already have access to. It's just ensuring that everyone knows how to use them to the best of their advantage. So I just wanted to highlight that as well, because I appreciate that the diagnostics tool isn't always feasible for every single company.
Inaccessible. Yeah, that's a great shout. Thank you for those. I know it's hard to condense into specific takeaways. When we're looking down the road in March for Neuro Diversity Celebration Week, what is on tap for BNP Paribas? What do you have in store?
Some tap. So yeah, it goes without saying it's a brilliant opportunity to remind your employees of the support. But of course, that needs to be something that needs to be a regular beating of the drum. So don't just use the awareness week to highlight this. Make sure it's throughout all of your comms. But this year we ensure that we are covering multiple paths so it can make it relevant and engage different audiences. So of course, we're delivering the training programs that we have in play. We've got a financial wellbeing session. We've got a gender-specific webinar that we're advertising. I'm also doing a session with Peppy, where we'll be focusing on how Peppy can support a neurodiversity and hoping to get an employee to also share their story. And then I'm just in the process of finalising an employee video that puts neurodiversity allyship front and centre. So it's a real focus on the strength and value of a neurodiverse workforce. And I've got like the head of HR in there, occupational health, ERG. So yeah, it's a real mix. I'm just in the process of doing that, and that would be in the communications on the big screens. So different ways we can get the message out there.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And then beyond Neurodiversity Celebration Week, what's next? What does support look like moving forward? I know you mentioned future surveys will be had, which obviously will, I'm sure, determine what that looks like, but anything specific that you know of?
It's going to keep evolving, and the way it's going to keep evolving is it's going to be shaped by employee feedback, provider insights, the latest research, and the ongoing audits to ensure that we are creating a truly inclusive environment. But but this is my ultimate aim. My ultimate aim is to reach a point where no separate reasonable adjustments are required. Instead, everything we are introducing in the workplace with the findings that we have should be designed with a universal lens. So providing tools that have a low barrier to entry for any employee that needs them, whether they have a formal diagnosis or not. So just ensuring they're there already. That would be my ultimate aim, and I'm hoping to get there.
Exciting. You will. I
Thanks.
am certain you will. All right, brilliant. Well, I think we're at the half hour. I think we should dive into some of the questions that are coming in from our fantastic attendees. So we'll shift gears a little bit here. We will try to get through as many questions. I'm just looking now at how many there are. If we don't get to yours live, please know that we will follow up with your question afterwards as well. So rest assured your question will be answered. So just taking a look here at one of the first ones. Okay, bear with me, Lauren, just reading this. So one of our biggest challenges is knowing when something should be handled by a manager versus it being escalated to HR or external support. So how do you know the difference? Hmm.
Again, it's individual and it's a very tricky situation to be in. I think the common misconception is that every manager should be trained in everything across the board for well-being. But essentially, a manager doesn't need to be an expert in neurodiversity. Um, HR does have a role to support and equip managers with the tools, with the confidence, with the guidance they need for conversations, be that the training or be that just the general individual conversations for their team members. And they're also there to advise when a matter should be escalated. So I think the relationship should be collaborative, not a handoff to either or. Um, so yeah, my pushback would be we try and encourage managers and HR to work together, be that the individual prefer to go to HR or the individual prefer to go to the manager. They come together and we work out a plan for the individual based on their needs.
Makes total sense. The next one is actually also leader specific. So we have leaders who are hesitant to actively encourage disclosure of neurodivergence, often because they're worried about opening something they don't feel equipped to handle. How did you approach this at BNP and what helped bring leaders on board?
I think our most successful senior manager hires, shall we say, um, they've often started with us delivering some sort of keynote on the particular wellbeing topic. And if we do have a candidate that has been identified as having a link to neurodiversity, for instance, we invite them to open or close the session. So it gives them that initial visibility and platform to support the initiative. And then 9 times out of 10, they're willing to share their own story. Another way is we also partner closely with ERGs. And when an ERG has a senior sponsor, we either draw on the sponsor's own story because most of the sponsors have some sort of relative interest in that particular ERG to sponsor it, or we work with the ERG co-lead and the sponsor to see if we can attract a senior manager. So those are the ways that we've been able to successfully engage senior managers. Not across all wellbeing topics. There's still some that we need to do a little bit more work on, but in terms of neurodiversity, that's how we've been able to recruit.
Brilliant. Question here. Did you create your own survey or get a specialist company to do this for you?
So the initial survey that we released was actually part of the benefit survey we release each year after they've opted in for the benefits that they want. So we added it to our benefit survey. So we worked with a company to create the benefit survey, but we added in a couple of questions on the neurodiverse specific. So I guess it took the pressure off it coming from I don't know D&I, DEI or HR because it was part of the benefits and it essentially came from an external provider who run the benefits platform.
Great. I really love this next question. How did you go about creating a strong business case for relevant funding and support from senior leaders, considering so many people need the support but do not disclose it?
Well, the survey results, the NHS waiting list, the impact to the business. We were having cases coming through from occupational health, so we were able to leverage off that data. You can get UK data from it as well and see if you can make it, relative to the survey data that you have. So we used all of these components. Um, I don't think anyone's naive to think that neurodiversity wasn't here before, and all of a sudden these celebrities are coming out of the woodwork, and now everyone's having diagnosis, that sort of thing. It's always been there, but it's how is it relevant to our business and how much impact can it have if we don't support our neurodivergent employees?
Mm. Okay, brilliant. I'm just sifting through. I'm amazed with how many questions are coming in, Lauren. I'll see how many we can get through. Um, 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 um. Next question is, I'm assuming this is in reference to the survey, but also just impact of the support. Are you seeing measurable results in A, productivity, B, health outcomes, C, reduced illness, and D, did I miss one? B, health outcomes, reduced illness, and neurodiversity progression to management roles? It's a lot there.
So it's difficult because it's still in its infancy. And if you've been on any of my other calls, I think you need at least 5 years worth of data to see any measurable change. That being said, the feedback that we're having with, receiving from the employees themselves indicates how positively this is being received. And, the measures put in place, less people having to go to occupational health for other reasons such as stress, because it was related to those individuals not being supported, not feeling supported, not having the right tools. So it's hard to measure at the moment, but it's absolutely something we've got in the pipeline to measure. But yeah, I think it's a little bit too early for us to say other than the anecdotal feedback.
You. This one is a good one. I just want you to reiterate the cost perspective that you shared. So diagnostics are known to be costly, as we know, with prices only increasing. Did you have to allocate any significant amount of budget to be able to offer this to a large population?
We initially started off with a small provision when we first introduced it. Small, it's actually quite big for the initial diagnosis. Um, and then we found with introducing the follow-on support that we needed more of a clear pathway with our PMI provider. So we're actually finding the cost itself has a reduction comparable to our initial cost for just the diagnosis itself, because the individuals are able to move along the journey quicker and receive the help that they need quicker as well. So yeah, I can't go into specifics with figures as it stands, but if you take a look at the This Can Happen awards profile, there's our case study on there, so there'll be a few details in there that you might be able to grab.
Thank you. And that also actually answers a question around, what exactly did this look like on your end? So please, yeah, go do check out that case study. Quickly here, there's a question around if someone self-diagnoses, is the support the same as someone who has been through the pathway and received a formal diagnosis?
Yes. Yeah, in theory it can be. The only difference would be if they need things like medication. But in essence, if it's particular tools that they need to help support them, or potentially counselling, CBT, anything along those lines that are also routes that can be taken, then yes, someone who is self-diagnosed could go down similar routes for that support.
Brilliant. That also ties nicely to this other question about, what about individuals that don't want to disclose to people at work? How do you reach these people? Is there anything they can access without everyone knowing? Absolutely, they do have that access to the same pathway, right? So there isn't a necessary need to disclose. However, we're of course building this culture where you should be able to safely and comfortably as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the hub that has all the services that support neurodiversity in some way, shape, or form will be on there. So the individual will be able to access that support confidentially. If they did get a diagnosis, they don't have to declare it to the business. But in order for them to have those adjustments made, they will need to speak to occupational health, who can then support them. But if it's just a case of, some of the MS tools, they've got that signposting and step-by-step guide on how to access it, how to switch it on. So yeah, there's multiple routes that individuals can get the support that they need.
Brilliant. I'm going to see if I can get to two more quick questions. Someone asked me about Pepe. How nice. Thank you for this question. Does Pepe offer any support around this? Assuming this meaning neurodiversity. Yes, the short answer is we do provide expert-led education and also personalized guidance for employees. So if you are neurodivergent, or as we're discussing right now, if you're just exploring a diagnosis, it includes clinically reviewed content on autism, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, and dyspraxia, along with also two evidence-based self-screening questionnaires that we have for both ADHD and autism. So although PEPI doesn't provide diagnoses, we really are able to support individuals in every step of this journey, which can often be a long and winding road for some, but really kind of helping that individual to understand their experience, navigate next steps, often expedite what can otherwise be kind of this complicated and complex process. So yeah, we really focus on kind of the practical strategies and confidence and support that genuinely does work for people at work and in everyday life. I'm just looking at the clock. Hopefully that answered that question. Thank you for that. I'll try to get to one more. Um, okay, Lauren, this one is back to you. Um, when you said targeted training, who did you target and why?
As in the training that we delivered. Yeah,
Yeah, I think yeah.
we had an all staff employee training module. So by targeted, of course, we did an all staff comms, but we also did dedicated comms to our wellbeing champions, for instance, or the Ability Network themselves. HR had their own dedicated training, and then of course the manager training as well. So although we had a session that encouraged all of the employees to join, we also had those separate sessions as well for those individual cohorts.
Amazing. Brilliant. We managed to get through quite a few questions.
Oh,
Apologies for those that we did not get to, but we will get you your answers, I promise. We just have 2 minutes left here together, so I just do want to close out the session by, first of all, thanking Lauren for the absolute brilliance that you bring to every single conversation. There's so much that I obviously learn from you every single day, but I'm so glad that we're able to have this kind of broader audience so that you can share a little bit more of all the amazing work that you do. So thank you. And also just to kind of come back to our core message of what this conversation is all about, really. Neurodiversity support, it is so individual and it is so tailored to that personalized experience. And I think that that is a really important message to take away. But, it works when people internally know what to do and where to go. Managers feel confident, employees feel confident, and it really does create that culture internally and that space where neurodiversity is a part of everyday conversation. So, just really quickly, we do want to leave you with a quick opportunity. If you are looking to learn more, Peppy is hosting an amazing webinar on the 4th of March. So ties really nicely with International Women's Day just a few days later around understanding neurodiversity in women. So really kind of beautifully looking at the intersection between our women's health and what that looks like and how to support your people. So there's this QR code that will take you to that registration page. So we would love to see you all again. And with that, I will say thanks to all of you for joining, and we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and week. Thanks so much.
thank you.